Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisco Gaming, and in today's video, sponsored by the makers of Whiteout Survival, I want to talk all about Zinman, a hero that I wish I understood better when I first started the game. He's a hero that has a lot of lore around him as being really good for construction, and we'll talk about why that's the case, and being okay in the arena in the early game, but someone you'll quickly replace. Now, I'll go in depth into all of these topics, and you can trust my guidance because I literally just finished the first generation of heroes. We're getting access to the second generation. And I am about 5 weeks into the game. I'm 67.5 million power. So if this is the kind of content you're interested in, experience with the early game and guidance about how good the heroes are and how they perform, consider subscribing, because I've been trying to push as much as I can to really, how do I say this? Do as well as I can in arena and also set myself up to be a rally lead. Now, whether or not you're free to play or pay to win, and I'm going the pay to win route, you're going to want to invest in Zinman, and when we look at any hero, the first thing you want to look at is, of course, what type of hero are they? This is a marksman hero. When you run armies out of your city, you're going to bring one hero of each troop type. This is the mythic hero you get in the first generation of heroes. That first generation of heroes, by the way, includes Molly, who you can get from gold keys, Zinman, who you can get in a number of ways, which we'll talk about. Also, you've got Natalia and then Geronimo available from VIP, all right? So Zinman, the reason everybody should work on him is because of his skills. And the skill that is most important is in the expedition section. Now, normally expedition skills are relevant when you're out in the world map, not when you're exploring. But this is available and relevant pretty much all the time, and it is a 15% construction cost reduction and a 15% construction speed up. This is massive. This is a passive benefit. It applies all the time. So although normally a mythic hero has 3 skills in the expedition designed for battling, okay? So when you're out in the world map, all 3 of these skills are relevant. In the case of Zinman, one of his skills is committed to building up your city. And that's why in the early game, people rush him for this skill specifically, because this is a huge savings. Huge savings. You're saving resources, you're saving speed ups. Massive. Now, with that said, if you want to max this skill, you're going to need to take Zinman to 4 stars. And so that is the recommendation that most people go with. Star level, you can see, is over here. It is actually the last stars that are the most expensive. They're about 100 a pop to upgrade. So you'll need shards of Zinman in order to do those upgrades. And Zinman is actually available from the daily special offer. So a part of what's really valuable there is that the daily special offer is a very, in my opinion, high value bundle as an early game player. Now, why is this a high value bundle as the sort of an early game player? Well, not only does it like say it's a high percentage of, okay. And by the way, when you get to the next generation of heroes, you get a choice, which is kind of cool. But if I go back to Gen 1, right, it's a high percentage of value. But in the early game, you actually need these mythic manuals. You need them very badly. You need the hero experience. So for the early game, everything you're getting in this bundle is super valuable. In the late game, I'm told you're not going to need any of this other stuff. You just want the shards. So you're not going to need the hero experience. You're not going to need the manuals as much. That probably depends on your level of spend. What I will say is that I started picking up Zinman from here every single day as soon as he showed up, which is right away. And also, he's available from Lucky Spins. Now, we're about to get Flint, and I was actually surprised because we only got 2 wheels of Zinman before we ultimately got Lucky Wheel with Flint. I don't think I could switch back to Zinman. I guess I'll find out tomorrow. But even if I can, like, I would prefer Flint. I'm going to be working on the next gen of heroes at that point. So I had thought that I'd positioned myself perfectly to do like one more wheel of Zinman to max him. But as it turns out, there isn't another wheel of Zinman. So we got 2 wheels of Zinman for whatever it's worth. And we got our second generation of heroes, I want to say like 36 days in to the age of the server. Which is really fast. So it'll depend a little bit on like when your server sort of pops for when you're going to get access to the next generation of heroes. But doubling back to Zinman, right? We talked about how you get his shards. We talked about why you'd want him to be 4-star, because then you can take every one of these skills to level 5. You can take your skills to a level below whatever your star level is. So if you're star level 2, you can take your skills to level 3. If you're star level 3, you can take your skills to level 4. Now, If you are a pay-to-win player or a rally, then you're going to want to push his skills as far as you can. And you're going to want to push his stars as far as you can. The reason is that every time you star up, you're going to be getting a meaningful benefit. In fact, if you look, just going to the next sort of piece of the snowflake over here, a piece of the star, I'm getting a very meaningful amount of stats for marksman, attack, and defense. This is what's relevant for sort of rallying and garrisoning, which is the thing I care about a lot now. Now, I am going to replace this hero, but in fact, I'm going to try to do that in short order with Alonso, but we'll talk more about what that breakpoint is in just a minute. So back to the skills. In Expedition, which is when you battle out in the world map, we talked about how this one skill is just a passive construction skill. This is the main reason people go for him. The top right skill, which is his joiner skill, if you were to join a rally with him in the first slot, is going to be 10% defense up and 10% health up, which is cool, but not as good as even what you can get from a SR hero, an epic hero. In the form of Patrick, he can do 25% health, which is considered to just be better. So this skill is just okay. And this skill, I would argue, is the most important one, increasing your damage dealt. That's like obviously a big deal. So maxing this skill, if you're using him for Expedition, which he's very good for that, is going to be really important. So this is my number one priority for, well, technically this is the number one priority, the economy skill. From there, it will be the damage if you're using him. And then of course, the defense and the health up. Okay. Now on the other side of things, on the left-hand side, you have your exploration skills. The exploration skills are relevant when you're exploring and when you're playing arena. And what's interesting about Zinman is that when you start the game, it's like hard to take everything in, but he's a stunner. He stuns a single target. The only problem is that this skill takes about 7 or 8 seconds to load up, and it's so slow that usually it ends up not being particularly relevant compared to other heroes that are just way higher impact much more quickly. But I'll show you exactly what this stun looks like in just a minute here. In fact, I will put it on screen in slow motion so you can see like the 7-second sort of countdown. You can see what the animation looks like, and you can see what that stun looks like. And I'll have this slowed down, but I just want you to get a visual on what that all does, okay? Now, the next skill makes it so that when Zinman is below 50% health, he gets a huge boost to his defense, and upwards of 150%. So this is kind of neat. When he gets focused, he can get really tanky, but I didn't put much priority into this skill. I didn't put much priority into any of these skills, in fact, because I was really pressed for these manuals, even as someone who was spending. Knowing that like 35 days in, also, we're going to get the next gen of heroes, and I would replace him as fast as I could from my arena lineup. And so I didn't really push his skills. They were my lowest priority for my arena team. I put them in other heroes that I thought would last longer. By the way, I made a full video about the Season 1 arena meta. I'll have a card toward the end of the video if you want to go watch that full Gen 1. Here's the arena meta, in my opinion, as someone who held rank 1 a number of times. But the point I want to make is that I felt like this was not an important skill, and I felt like it was not as an important skill because I want things that are like relevant all the time, not just when he gets low health. And I get that once he's, is getting beat up, it's nice to make him more tanky, but once he's getting beat up, you're probably losing anyways. Like, he's a backline guy, so that's why I've got that only at level 2. This skill I have at level 3 over here, Zinman's Energetic Poise, provides a attack speed boost. Now, I don't know, and I did ask in my Discord server, linked in the description, if this would increase the speed of using his skill, the one that's got a... No, it's just regular attacks. Right. So this is not a damage boost. That's why I wanted to know. Like, technically, you're increasing your damage by attacking faster, but it's not an overall damage boost because this ability doesn't get impacted at all by virtue of your attacking faster. So all of your other sort of basic attacks that you're dealing will go faster with this attack speed boost. It is a DPS boost. DPS boost is great. Don't get me wrong. And that's what he's there to just do damage. So he's there for that. But again, when making my prioritizations on limited manuals, I didn't put them into his skills. I put them into Geronimo, right? I can show you that. Whoopsies, right over here, right? Like, I put them into Geronimo. I put them into Molly. I put them into Natalia. Now, if you aren't gaining access to Natalia and you aren't gaining access to Geronimo, then like very obviously you'll have more manuals to work with potentially because you only have like 2 heroes to put them on. But the cost of deploying your manuals here does go up and up and up. So you can see it's going to take 30 to go to level 3, and to take a skill to level 4 is going to be 50, and then it's 75 for the final skill. And I think it's 10 for the first skill. So the skill ups get more and more expensive. At some point I was like, I don't know when Gen 2 is coming. I'll just start to invest in his skills. Maybe I'll get use from them. Okay, now we are not done with all of his skills, by the way, because these are the exploration and expedition skills that you start with on the hero, but every mythic tier hero has their own widget. For Zinman, it's his woodpecker, which he holds in his hand. Can't blame him. And what this does is a number of things. Now, I want to talk about all of the things that widgets do very briefly, because I did not understand how important the widget was for a mythic tier hero, and I underinvested in the widgets thinking I'll just replace them anyways, which is true, but these widgets provide a shocking amount of stats. Now, I took the widget only to level 2. In order to unlock the widget, you need 5 of these sort of widget pieces. Okay. And then it'll be 10 to go to level 2, 15 to go to level 3, 20 to go to level 4. It goes up by 5 every single time. So it gets more and more expensive. But you'll notice, look at the stat boost here. So when you're in a rally, garrison, or just a map situation, the stat boost you get is insane because it caps out at level 10 of a 50% boost, bro. I wish I had understood that. 50% of stats for lethality and health, which is also like 2 stats you care about a whole heck of a lot. Maybe not health for your marksman, but the lethality is like one of the most important things. So yeah, wish I understood that. Also, you're gaining stats for exploration, which is arena and exploration, right? That's what the hero attack, hero defense, hero health, escort attack, escort defense, and escort health is. That is all related to when you're in arena or exploration game mode. But you also get skills from the widget, which is kind of nuts. And one of the skills is going to be for exploration. One is going to be for expedition. The exploration skill makes it so that Zinman's nail gun enters overcharge mode, increasing his attack. So I think that's just attack percent, not attack speed. This might influence your damage dealt, by the way, from his big skill that does the stun. I'm not entirely sure. And then defending right over here is the expedition skill. So when you're out in the world, if you are defending something, not if you rally, but if you're garrisoning it, and you are the captain, Zinman constructs an archer tower. I mean, that's all flavor text, I think, increasing defender troop attack by 15%. So some people have said, Chiscool, you might use Zinman to garrison in Gen 2 because the Gen 2 hero Alonso isn't going to give you a relevant skill over here for defending. It is possible, as it turns out, because my widget level is so low. Like, I'm just going to get Alonso. I'm going to try to get his widget very progressed. And just because his widget is going to give so many stats, it's just going to be better than what I can get from here, I assume. So in a not too long period of time, depending on how fast I can get the widgets on Alonso, who's the Gen 2 marksman, I'll just use him instead. But I'm mentioning this to you because when you decide what you're doing with your Zinman and how far you take his skills and his woodpecker, you're going to want to consider whether or not you think you will continue using him into the next generation. And the advantage of Zinman is that as a daily special offer, you can get him very cheaply. He comes from wheels as well, which is like you could do that with gems, even if you weren't spending any money. You can and should push your progress on Zinman to 4 stars. And I think everybody should aspire to do that for the construction reduction. And the great news there is that there's a bunch of game modes that, as a new player, you may be like, bro, I don't understand what you're telling me when I say that it'll be relevant to you in Foundry and it will be relevant to you in the Frostfire Mine. But these are game modes where you're going to have multiple armies out at a time, potentially. And when you do, even if he's not a part of your number 1 army, it's going to be really nice to have competent heroes for your other armies. And you're just going to have to trust me on that. Unless you watch some of my other videos that I'll be making about these topics, consider subscribing so you can see exactly what that looks like. Now, with that said, other players have put a ton of sophistication into when it is that you would upgrade Zinman and how powerful he is really compared to other heroes. So let me show you these really incredible infographics. So I believe this infographic was created by Y, big shout out. But if I zoom in on this thing, it shows you the sort of percent improvement going from one hero tier and generation to another. So the long story short here is that if you go from an epic hero to Zinman, you're looking at a 35.7% average lift in strength. So if we look at the stats here for the epic heroes, all right, these ones right over here that are marksmen, Jasser, Bahidi, Sioyun. If you were to get them to 5 stars, you get 140% attack. That's pretty cool, right? But your marksman attack on a maxed out Zinman is 200% attack, bro. Bro. It's a huge jump in power to go to the legendary tier. Okay. And I thought this was like such an interesting diagram. So it should come as no surprise. There's a huge difference between the purple and gold tier heroes, but it's a 25 to 50% jump. Not only is this a massive arena stat increase, but a large expedition boost too. With the introduction of hero weapons, there's a lethality and health boost and extra skills benefiting rallies. Zinman is great for Gen 1 and Gen 2 Garrison. And I wanted to show this because when I was deciding like, what am I doing here? Like, how far do I take Zinman? A part of this was the calculus, but then also over here, you can see Alonso's who comes next. And I wanted to mention this because some people like skip generations of heroes. And I think, again, everybody should be going for Zinman for the construction boost, but you get another big jump in power for Alonso, which we'll talk about in a separate video. But here the insight is that Gen 2 starts to establish the general rule of a 20% upgrade per gen, but note that defense stats are the same as the purple tier. So that is kind of surprising that like the hero defense stats aren't bumping up as the purple tier. That's like kind of, they're not bumping up very much. You can see it. It's like 3.37%. It's what they've listed here as the boost. But regardless, I thought this was just like very insightful for sort of comparing these, but you can see like 200% attack versus 240% attack and defense is kind of a big deal. The lethality and health, I believe, comes from the widget. So it kind of depends on how far you push your widget, but you could get 60% of lethality and 60% of health, right? And I showed you the widget for where you would get that. I would assume this doesn't include the other hero gear because that's like movable across all the different heroes, but the widget is unique to this hero, so I assume that's accounted for in here. Now, there is one other diagram I wanted to show you, okay? We zoom out of this one, and here's another one. By the way, if you want to see these diagrams in full, go to my Discord server, linked in the description. There's a lot of nuance to like when you would upgrade from one tier of hero to another, and there's to get the full nuance, you're going to have to look at the sheet and see the explanation, but you start to get the benefit once you get to like the blue star level. So as an example, with no levels on the widget, just getting Zinman to, it looks like 4.2 stars, I think is how I would notate that. He is going to be better than a 5-star epic hero, you know, Bahidi or Jasser. And Zinman to Alonso, if you maxed out the widget on Zinman, you're going to need to get your Alonso to 4.4 stars, which is pretty far along, and the widget to 9 in order to get a better result, I think, with the Alonso. I think that's what this sort of sheet is designed to help us figure out. Anyways, long story short is that it actually requires a lot more from Gen 2 than I was expecting to potentially replace your Gen 1. So I think you could get used for Zinman far beyond when like Alonso has just shown up, because a lot of people won't have the star level on him anyways, unless I guess you're a rally or a garrison. And like if you're a rally or a garrison, like, yeah, like you spend to work on the widget, you spend to get that star level up as fast as you can, and you enjoy it for as long as possible until the sort of next generation of heroes comes out, and like then you'll, you know, be looking at, okay, well, do we replace that with what kind of comes next? All right. But again, if you want to see this full sort of diagram and the explanation, it's here, but it's on my Discord server that's linked in the description for Whiteout Survival. All right, let me jump back in game. If I had to summarize the role Zinman provides, it's for that construction speed enhancement and cost reduction for resources. He is an early game arena top tier player, but immediately gets replaced in Gen 2 if you go for Alonso and get him to a high enough star level, because his skill, although it stuns, which is very powerful, it is also very slow. And that slow firing of that skill is the only reason it's not more valuable. If that thing fired off every 4 seconds, he would be very, very, very scary in arena. But it doesn't. All right. And also, from what I can tell, because Alonso's an attacking hero, you may have the opportunity to garrison with Zinman into Gen 2. I sort of heard that and had planned to do that, but because I didn't do his widget, I don't know that it really matters, right? I don't know if that's where I end up, as it turns out. Now, if you're looking for when I spun the wheel for Zinman, and some of my original thoughts, intentions, and impressions, which I think would be helpful, you can check the card in the end screen. Alternatively, I promised you a Gen 1 arena meta. Check the card. That'll be over there as well. I use the information that I put into that guide to periodically get first place for the week in arena. And that was pretty cool to do until I got completely outclassed. And well, it's going to happen unless you really push the power. And if you want to see that, consider subscribing, because I've been pushing. Oh, man, I spent 1.5 million gems. That was a fun video. Until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Take care, everybody.